They cracked open Mary Queen of Scots' coffin after 400 years. What they found inside left experts speechless and desperately trying to reseal it. Her execution was so horrifying that grown men fainted, but that was nothing compared to what happened to her body afterwards. For centuries, her lead coffin sat untouched in Westminster Abbey, hiding a dark secret. When investigators finally broke the seal in 1867, they stumbled upon something so disturbing that it was immediately covered up. What was really inside that coffin? And why did they break into her tomb not once, but multiple times? Mary Queen of Scots walked toward the executioner's block at Fotheringhay Castle with remarkable composure. Her story stands as one of the most compelling tales from the Tudor era, filled with political intrigue, personal tragedy, and dramatic twists that would seem almost too extraordinary for fiction if they weren't historically documented. Her life had been a series of dramatic events from the very beginning. She became Queen of Scotland when she was just 6 days old, and her path would take her through 3 marriages, each more complicated than the last. Her first husband was Francis, the young King of France, but their marriage was cut short when he died at only 16 years old. Returning to Scotland, Mary then married her cousin Henry Stuart, Lord Darnley, but this union ended in violence when Darnley was killed in an explosion at Kirk in Edinburgh. The circumstances surrounding his death remain one of history's great mysteries, though many suspected foul play. Her third marriage proved even more controversial. She wed James Hepburn, the Earl of Bothwell, who was widely believed to have orchestrated the murder of her second husband. This scandalous union turned Scottish nobility against her and ultimately forced her to flee her own kingdom. Seeking refuge, she crossed the border into England in 1568, expecting support from her cousin, Queen Elizabeth I. Instead, what she found was nearly 2 decades of imprisonment. Elizabeth viewed Mary as a threat to her throne. As a Catholic with a strong claim to the English crown, Mary became a focal point for those who opposed Elizabeth's Protestant rule. During her long captivity, Mary's frustration grew, and she eventually consented to participate in several plots aimed at assassinating Elizabeth and placing herself on the English throne. These conspiracies would seal her fate. When the Babington plot was uncovered in 1586, Elizabeth's advisors finally had the evidence they needed to push for Mary's execution. The execution itself, which took place on February 8, 1587, was a gruesome affair that did not go according to plan. A skilled executioner was expected to sever a head with a single clean blow of the axe, but Mary's execution was far from this ideal. The first strike missed her neck entirely, and instead embedded the blade into the back of her skull. This would have caused excruciating pain and likely knocked her unconscious, though historical accounts suggest she may have remained aware of those terrible moments. The executioner's second attempt came closer to completing the task, striking her neck, but even this blow failed to fully separate her head from her body. A small piece of sinew still connected them, forcing the executioner to use the axe like a saw to complete the beheading. Only then could he lift her head and proclaim to those gathered in the great hall of Fotheringhay Castle, "God save the Queen," referring to Elizabeth. What happened next added an element of dark theatricality to an already horrific scene. As the executioner held Mary's head aloft, the wig she had been wearing came loose, and her head fell to the floor. The assembled witnesses saw that the woman who had once been celebrated for her beauty now had short gray hair, a stark reminder of the years she had spent in captivity and the toll they had taken. The aftermath of the execution was carefully orchestrated. Everything that had come into contact with Mary's blood was systematically destroyed. The scaffold, the executioner's block, clothes, clothing, and any other items stained with her blood were all burned in the Great Hall's fireplace. This wasn't simply about cleanup. Elizabeth's government was determined to prevent Catholic supporters from obtaining relics from the execution. In an age when religious devotion often centered on physical objects associated with martyrs, anything touched by Mary's blood could have become a powerful symbol for those who opposed the Protestant establishment. The execution haunted Elizabeth for the rest of her life. Despite her reputation as a strong and decisive ruler, she struggled with the consequences of ordering her cousin's death. She even went so far as to imprison one of her own advisors in the Tower of London for his role in pushing for the execution. Elizabeth reportedly believed that by executing another anointed monarch, someone she viewed as having been chosen by God to rule, she had committed a sin that might prevent her from entering heaven after her own death. Before her execution, Mary had made clear requests about what should happen to her remains. She wanted her body sent to France to be buried alongside her first husband, the late King Francis. This wish was understandable given that her years in France had been among the happiest of her life, and Francis had been the husband she married for love rather than political necessity. However, Elizabeth refused this request. Instead, Mary's body was embalmed in a chamber within the same castle where she had been executed. The embalming process was standard practice for royalty and nobility, designed to preserve the body for burial. Once prepared, her remains were placed in a secure lead coffin, which was then left in a presence chamber at Fotheringhay Castle. The lead coffin served a practical purpose, as lead was known to seal in any odors and prevent decay from being noticeable to those nearby. But then Mary's body simply sat there, unburied, for months. The delay was extraordinary, particularly for someone of royal blood. The reason for this lengthy postponement was Elizabeth's refusal to sign off on burial arrangements. Various officials and authorities debated where Mary should be laid to rest, unable to reach a decision without the Queen's approval. The situation put everyone in an awkward position, as leaving a queen's body unburied for such an extended period was highly unusual and somewhat disrespectful. Eventually, a decision was reached. Mary would be buried at Peterborough Cathedral, chosen primarily because it was the nearest cathedral to Fotheringhay Castle, her execution site. During the embalming process, Mary's heart and internal organs had been removed, as was customary. These were buried somewhere within the grounds of Fotheringhay Castle, though their exact location was not recorded with precision. The burial register at Peterborough Cathedral documented the event with this entry: "The Queen of Scots was most sumptuously buried in Ye Cathedral Church of Peterborough the first day of August 1587, who was beheaded at Fotheringhay Castle the 8th of February before." The word sumptuously suggests that despite the delay and political complications, some effort was made to give Mary a burial befitting her royal status. Several weeks before the actual burial, officers and heralds from Queen Elizabeth's household arrived at Peterborough Cathedral to select an appropriate burial location. They chose a spot directly opposite the tomb of Catherine of Aragon, the first wife of King Henry VIII. This placement carried symbolic weight, as Catherine had also been a Catholic queen who had fallen out of favor with the English crown. Preparations for Mary's funeral were elaborate. A large hearse was constructed near the first steps of the choir, and the cathedral was draped with black cloth throughout, creating the somber atmosphere expected for a royal funeral. The procession that brought Mary's body from Fotheringhay Castle to Peterborough Cathedral was both solemn and dramatic. Between 1 and 2 o'clock in the morning on July 30th, Mary's lead coffin began its final journey. The body traveled on a chariot draped with black velvet, accompanied by a torchlit procession that wound through the dark countryside. The Bishop and Dean of Peterborough led the procession, joined by many members of Mary's household who had remained loyal to her throughout her imprisonment, as well as friends who wished to pay their respects. Upon arriving at the cathedral, the coffin was carried inside and lowered into a vault that would serve as Mary's resting place. The following day, various lords and ladies gathered at the bishop's palace, and the day after that, members of the clergy assembled in the cathedral for a sermon delivered by the Bishop of Lincoln. However, this funeral service represented yet another way in which Mary's wishes were ignored. She had been a devout Catholic throughout her life, but she was given a Protestant burial service. For someone who had suffered and ultimately died in part because of religious conflicts, this final insult must have been particularly bitter, even if Mary herself was beyond caring. The situation would change dramatically in 1603, when Queen Elizabeth I died. Mary's son, James VI of Scotland, succeeded to the English throne and became known as King James I of England. This historic moment united the Scottish and English crowns under a single monarch for the first time, creating what would eventually become the United Kingdom. James now held the power that his mother had only dreamed of, and he was in a position to address what many saw as the undignified treatment of her remains. 3 years after becoming King of England, James began drawing up plans to give his mother a burial that he felt properly reflected her status in history. Mary, Queen of Scots, deserved better than a hastily arranged funeral in a provincial cathedral, conducted according to religious rites she would have rejected. James commissioned a grand tomb that would take 6 years to complete, demonstrating both the scale of his ambition and his commitment to honoring his mother's memory. In 1612, the work was finally ready. Gravediggers were sent to Peterborough Cathedral with orders to break into Mary's vault and retrieve her coffin. The lead coffin that had remained sealed since 1587 was carefully removed from its resting place and prepared for transport. Mary's remains then made one final journey, this time in a grand procession from Peterborough Cathedral to Westminster Abbey in London. A royal warrant authorized this reburial, giving it the full weight of official approval and royal ceremony. The tomb that James had commissioned for his mother was truly spectacular. Made of marble, it was positioned in the south aisle of the Lady Chapel at Westminster Abbey, placing Mary at the very heart of English religious life. This location was highly significant, as Westminster Abbey had long been the traditional burial place of English monarchs and the site of royal coronations. By placing his mother there, James was making a clear statement about her legitimate place in the monarchy's history. The effigy that adorns Mary's tomb depicts her with great dignity and respect. She is shown wearing a close-fitting coif, a type of cap that was fashionable among noblewomen of her era. Her neck is covered by a laced ruff, the elaborate collar that was characteristic of late 16th century aristocratic fashion. A long mantle drapes over her figure, and at her feet rests a crowned Scottish lion, symbolizing her role as Queen of Scotland. Every detail of the tomb was designed to present Mary as a legitimate monarch who deserved to be remembered with honor. James made another interesting decision regarding the placement of his mother's tomb. He chose to position it directly opposite the tomb of Queen Elizabeth I. This arrangement deliberately called attention to the rivalry between the two queens, the conflict that had defined both of their lives and ultimately led to Mary's execution. However, there was a subtle detail that many visitors to Westminster Abbey notice. Mary's tomb is slightly larger and more elaborate than Elizabeth's. Whether this was intentional or simply a reflection of changing artistic styles is debatable, but it certainly suggests that James wanted his mother to be remembered as Elizabeth's equal, if not her superior. For over 2 centuries, Mary's remains rested undisturbed in her grand tomb at Westminster Abbey. The vault beneath became her final resting place, or so it seemed. But in 1867, the tomb would be opened once again, this time for reasons of historical curiosity rather than royal decree. Arthur Penrhyn Stanley, the Dean of Westminster at the time, was a man fascinated by history and determined to create a complete record of all the monarchs and significant figures buried within the abbey. Stanley was known for his intellectual curiosity and his somewhat unconventional approach to his role. He decided to undertake a systematic search and documentation of the various vaults beneath Westminster Abbey, and this project would eventually lead him to Mary, Queen of Scots. Stanley's primary motivation was to locate the lost tomb of King James I, Mary's son. James had died in 1625, and while it was known that he had been buried in Westminster Abbey, the exact location of his remains had become unclear over the centuries. Historical records suggested he might have been interred in the same vault as Henry VII and Elizabeth of York, the founders of the Tudor dynasty who were buried in the magnificent Henry VII Chapel. However, there was also a rumor circulating that James might have been buried alongside his mother in her vault. To settle this question, Stanley organized an examination of Mary's vault, which required breaking into the tomb that had been sealed since 1612. When the vault was finally opened, Stanley and his team made several interesting discoveries. Mary's lead coffin was found positioned along the north wall of the vault, exactly where it had been placed more than 2.5 centuries earlier. The lead had preserved the coffin well, protecting it from the deterioration that would have affected a wooden casket. However, Mary was far from alone in this vault. Over the years since her reburial, the vault had been opened multiple times to accommodate additional burials of other members of the royal family. This was common practice at Westminster Abbey, where space was limited, and vaults were often used for multiple interments from the same family line. What Stanley found was essentially a royal family crypt, crowded with the coffins of various Stuart descendants and relations. Mary's coffin was actually positioned beneath that of Lady Arbella Stuart, a woman who had her own tragic story. Arbella was a potential claimant to the English throne and a great-great-granddaughter of Henry VII. Her proximity to the throne made her a person of interest to various political factions, and she spent much of her life under suspicion, and eventually died in the Tower of London in 1615. Her burial in Mary's vault connected her to the Stuart line. The vault also contained the remains of Henry, Prince of Wales, the eldest son of James I, who died unexpectedly at the age of 18 in 1612. His death was a significant blow to the Stuart dynasty, as he had been carefully prepared to succeed his father as king. Also present was Anne Hyde, Duchess of York, who was the mother of two future queens, Mary II and Anne. Her inclusion in the vault reflected her importance as the ancestor of monarchs, even though she herself was not of royal birth. Elizabeth Stuart, known as the Winter Queen of Bohemia, was another occupant of the vault. She was the daughter of James I and briefly served as Queen of Bohemia before being forced into exile. Her descendants would eventually inherit the British throne when the Hanoverian line succeeded the Stuarts in 1714. Prince Rupert of the Rhine, a famous military commander during the English Civil War and a nephew of King Charles I, was also buried there. The vault held numerous children of King James II as well, a sobering reminder of the high infant and child mortality rates of the period. Even royal children with access to the best available medical care frequently died young from diseases and conditions that are easily treated today. Queen Anne, who reigned from 1702 to 1714, was found in the vault along with her son William, Duke of Gloucester, who had been her only child to survive infancy but died at age 11. The sheer number of burials in the vault revealed something important about the history of the tomb itself. Each time a new burial took place, the vault had to be opened, meaning that Mary's tomb and coffin had been disturbed numerous times over the centuries. Each opening would have involved breaking through the seals and moving existing coffins to make room for new ones. Far from being a peaceful, undisturbed resting place, Mary's vault had seen considerable activity. After Stanley completed his thorough documentation of the vault and its contents, recording the position and condition of each coffin, the vault was sealed once more. Historical records suggest it has not been opened since that 1867 examination, meaning that Mary and her vault companions have now rested undisturbed for over 150 years. The investigation also solved the mystery of King James I's burial location. He was indeed found in the vault of Henry VII and Elizabeth of York, not with his mother as the rumors had suggested. This discovery allowed Stanley to complete that portion of his comprehensive documentation project. Mary's story, even in death, reflects the turbulent nature of her life. Her coffin was moved, her tomb was broken multiple times, and she was exhumed and reburied nearly 100 miles from her original resting place. The elaborate ceremony that accompanied her 1612 reburial at Westminster Abbey gave her a tomb befitting her status as a queen and her place in history. Yet it still wasn't what she had wanted. Her expressed wish had been to rest in France beside her first husband, a desire that was never fulfilled. The manner of her death continues to shock those who learn about it today. The botched execution, requiring multiple blows of the axe, was a brutal end for anyone, let alone a queen. Yet despite the violence of her death and the political machinations that surrounded her burial and reburial, Mary, Queen of Scots, remains a figure of enduring fascination. Her vault in Westminster Abbey, crowded with Stuart descendants, stands as a testament to the dynasty she helped establish. Even if she never lived to see her son unite the crowns of Scotland and England, as she might have dreamed,